Is your music classroom stuck in a traditional mold? In this episode, we'll explore how student voice can revolutionize music education with the help of a music teacher turned children's book author.
Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We are so glad to be here with you.
Yeah. Now, Theresa, I am a few more weeks until I have summer, but I know you have made it to summer. So tell me what's going on.
Yes.
And what were some highlights maybe of the last month or so?
Yeah. Well, yes, I am officially on summer vacation, which is just wonderful. It was a crazy semester. It really was. Yeah. But let's see, highlights. Okay, so this semester, one of the classes that I got to work with was the Introduction to Music Education class. I can't remember if I've talked about it on the podcast or not, but it's freshman undergraduate students who are going to be music ed majors. And it's fun, Kathryn. Like, I have some memories of that class when I was in college. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the projects we ended the semester with was a podcasting project. Go figure. But it was actually really, really cool. The students, we kind of built the project together. I said to them, we're going to be doing this thing where, we are, as a class, are going to be creating a podcast. You're all going to be contributing an episode to it. And we kind of said, like, what do we think? What do we want? Should they be interviews? Should they be solo? Should you work in groups? Should you work in, and the students decided that they thought it should be pretty open, that they could either work by themselves or they could work in a small group if they wanted to. So that's how they did that. Some of them decided that they wanted to do interview episodes where they would interview a guest. Some of them wanted to just talk about something that they were passionate about. It was just incredible. We talk a lot about getting to know your students and that idea of student voice. In fact, that's going to be the topic of today's podcast. But this was that opportunity for these students to really just share something that they were either really interested in and they knew a lot about in regards to music, or something that they wanted to learn about. For example, one student teaches music in a preschool. So she talked about her experience putting on their first preschool holiday pageant and what she learned from that experience as a music teacher. And that was just fascinating. Another student was really curious about repertoire. So he interviewed one of the doctoral students in wind band conducting about repertoire and programming. And he wanted to know how band directors choose repertoire for different kinds of concerts and what their programming and stuff was like. Another group was really into mariachi. So they interviewed a mariachi educator. I mean, it was fantastic. We told them, I said, we kind of as a class decided about 20 to 30 minutes was ideal for the episodes. One group went on for an hour. It was so good. They said, do we have to cut it? I was like, no, just leave it. Do that. Yeah. Do any editing that you think might be necessary. But it was such a really neat project for them to be able to share their voices and to be able to dig into something that they were passionate about. Yeah. It was awesome.
And I still think, that relates to kind of what we talk about in this episode too. There's always something to learn by somebody else's perspective and somebody else's experience. And it does not have to be the same, grade level and kind of classroom that you have, where that you could still take so much away from what other people think to do or what happens. There's just so much to learn from other people.
Everyone learned so much. I learned so much, right?
Yeah.
Just from listening to them and the people they interviewed. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yes, like you said, it really leads into today's interview. We had, a great opportunity to talk to Sarah Gulish. Sarah was on almost the beginning, right? We said episode 9.
Yeah.
She was one of our early guests, and it was wonderful to bring her back and talk about, some of her upcoming and current endeavors, things that she's working on. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get to the interview, though, let's just remind you, show notes, make sure you check those out. They're going to be below in the podcast player, or you can find them linked below the video in YouTube. And there's several links that I know you're going to want to get from Sarah. So be sure to check those out.
For sure. And we know you're going to like today's interview, but please consider showing Pass the Baton some love by subscribing or following or leaving a review. Those really, really help us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as just one last reminder, we do have the Buy Me a Coffee site where we've got the Pass the Baton Coffee Club. It's less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Send some support, and then also get some get some little perks for you as well.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back. We are so excited to be joined by our guest today, Dr. Sarah Gulish. Sarah, welcome. It's good to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So you were with us. We were just talking about this, we think 3 years ago, way back on episode 9. So first, very exciting that you're back and willing to talk to us again.
Yeah, you've done so many episodes since then.
I know, it's kind of awesome. But a lot's happened for you since that time as well. So maybe for anybody who either didn't listen to that episode yet and doesn't know you, or just wants to hear what's going on, maybe you can give us a little update. So tell us a little about your background and what you're up to these days in music ed.
Sure. So again, I'm Sarah Gulish. I have spent the majority of my career as a high school public school music teacher, and I was lucky to teach at the same school for 16 years, teaching a variety of classes, mostly at the secondary level, but I did do some elementary as well. And in 2019, not that long before I was on the podcast the first time around, I started a digital publishing company for music education. And as we kind of thought about where we wanted the company to go, it was very clear about 1.5 years ago that I had to choose to keep teaching full time or to pursue running the company full time. And so I did make the choice to leave my teaching job, which was a very hard choice. It's been almost 1 year since I've been out of the classroom. But now I currently work as an adjunct professor at Westchester University, which is in Pennsylvania. So I get to teach music ed undergraduates 1 day a week, which is super fun. And then the rest of the week, I kind of split my time doing stuff for FLAT. So that might be writing, it might be podcasting, it might be editing, acquiring books. I mean, it just runs the gamut depending on the week.
Yeah. Oh, that's very exciting. And wow, it's also crazy to think it's been 1 year since you made that change. So
yeah, it's been 1 year and I'm still here to tell the tale. So
awesome. She's still here. She's still smiling. That's what we like.
Yeah.
But also you can add now to the list too, that you have a new children's book, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that and congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's so funny. When I thought of what this year would look like, writing a children's book was not part of the plan. And I think that's been an interesting theme of this year is because I've had kind of more space to dream and think about, the future of our company and my future too. I've been able to say yes to more opportunities that seem like they'll serve our greater community. And so I love writing. I've written lots of books for music educators before. I've done some fiction writing just kind of on my own. And I had this opportunity last fall to learn from Vicki Weber, which if anyone listening doesn't know Vicki Weber, she's an incredible children's book author. And she basically reached out to us and said, hey, do you want to learn about how to do physical distribution? Because up until this point, our books have been strictly digital. And we said, yeah, we would actually like to distribute our children's books physically because we've got a lot of requests for that. So instead of throw one of our authors into this process as a guinea pig, my brother and I decided, why don't we collaborate on a book together? And I had this children's book idea that had kind of been, living in my brain for a while. And so it seemed like the perfect opportunity for us to try a collaboration and then to use it as a template for helping our future authors release their work.
Yeah. Cool. So it's just the right time, right place, and a couple of ideas.
It really was. And I have to give Vicki Weber so many props. I mean, she has been meeting with us on a nearly weekly basis in September,
Wow.
just because she believes in our company and wants to see us win. And so, yeah, I feel very grateful for that.
Okay. So what's the name of the book? Tell us about it.
The book does have a name. The book is called Rosie Rocks. And if you've been around FLAT at all, you might know one of our, beloved longtime employees, Rosie, who started off as an intern and then ended up, moving into an admin role for us for a time. We would sign a lot of our communications, Rosie Rocks. And so this was kind of a phrase we threw around. And so I had this idea of a young girl who wanted to play electric guitar, and that name was just stuck in my head from day one.
Oh, that's perfect. So the book is called Rosie Rocks. And can you give us a little sneak peek about what the story is? Obviously we want people to read it, but what's it about?
Yeah, sure. So the book takes place in a music classroom. At least that's where it starts. And the whole premise is that it's instrument selection day. And so in this school, it happens in the 4th grade. I know it happens in a lot of schools where maybe the band program might come in and say you can pick your instrument. So this idea is it's a classroom where kids are picking an instrument that they want to focus on. And Rosie's a very shy kid, but she has had this dream of playing electric guitar. And you start to learn that she has a lot of knowledge of women in a guitar music sense. She kind of name drops different female guitarists throughout the book. So you can tell she's a big fan of music. But she's really shy. So she's afraid to ask her teacher if she can play electric guitar, but she finally gets the courage to do so. And so the book is a little bit about her journey learning the instrument and what happens along the way.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know that you had talked about had to do with Rosie kind of finding her voice along the way. And that's something that is, obviously really important to us through Pass the Baton. We talk about student voice a lot.
Yeah.
Tell us more. How does that fit into Rosie's story?
Yeah. I think this is a story I saw a lot as a teacher. And, I taught guitar my whole 16 years. And guitar was always an instrument that I wanted to learn. Piano was my primary instrument growing up. And I just thought the guitar was so cool. And I didn't see a lot of women around me playing the guitar. It felt like a very, any band that I played in, I always played keyboard or I was told to sing background vocals. And so, I never really got a chance to play guitar until I was an adult and I started teaching it. But what I found is I had a lot of students who weren't necessarily in our music program, but who are self-taught guitarists that really found their space with the guitar more than any other instrument. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the portability is a big thing. A kid could come into my classroom, grab a guitar out of the closet, sit in the hallway and play to themselves. And there was something very special about that type of self-regulation that students could do with the guitar or with the ukulele or with an instrument that could accompany them harmonically. That was portable. And so from the, very first year of me teaching, I can think of students who found their voice through guitar. These were kids that maybe didn't thrive in other spaces in the school, but you put a guitar in their hands and they were a whole new kid. And I can think of a kid. I just went back and saw the concert at my school last week. And one of my students, Luke, and when he gets on stage, he's transformed. He is a different child. And so I really wanted to capture that story that there are kids that, if they don't find their thing in the arts or they don't find something that helps them with that human expression piece, they might never find their voice. And so for Rosie, it was guitar.
Yeah. I think too, and I got a sneak peek of the book too. Part of it was that the teacher listened, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how much detail you want to go into it, but just the fact that the teacher was listening and taking cues from Rosie to know what, for instrument selection day, to follow her lead, right? So part of it, I feel like the student voice is the teacher being willing to step back a little bit and slow down if needed and tune into their kids. And like you said with guitars for your classes in previous years, having that available for kids to be able to grab, use, do, I don't know. It's part of the culture of the room.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring up the music teacher. Her name is Ms. A. she was my daughter helped come up with her idea. She like did character sketches for her and all of that. But Ms. A, I would love to say that I feel like I was that type of teacher from day one, and I definitely wasn't. It took me a while to kind of embrace some of my Ms. A-ness, but I'm glad that you brought that up because there is a lot of, I think, subtext in this book. If you're a music educator, you might read it differently than if, you're any old person picking up the book off the shelf, because most of us know how music classrooms can be run and how oftentimes instrument selection can be very gendered. It can also be based on just what a school has, which is an understandable thing. But I mean, how many times have you heard someone say, oh, I really wanted to play the drums, or I really wanted to play the clarinet, but my teacher said I had to play the trumpet? A lot of times students are kind of boxed in. And so the kids that are quiet can easily be overlooked. And the kids that want to do something different from, maybe what their teacher wants them to do can be overlooked. And so I did try to make it very clear that this teacher was intent on getting everyone involved and really helping them find their thing.
So what kind of recommendation? So, like you said, there's the music educator subtext of the book, which I love. Yeah. I would expect nothing less. Yeah. What suggestions would you have for teachers? Like what should they be thinking about? Like, what's the message?
Well, the hard part is, like, if we're thinking about ensembles, for example, and I think that's where a lot of instrument selection happens, right? It happens in a band program or an orchestra program. You're already kind of boxed in by whatever you want that ensemble to be. Mm-hmm. And so I think the first question you have to ask is, what is the end goal for these students? Is the end goal for them to have a perfectly balanced wind band? And if that is your end goal, then there isn't a lot of space for student voice and choice. Yeah. There just isn't, because you have to achieve a specific instrumentation. And so I think that's a hard thing for us to wrestle with. And it's also hard if we're part of a feeder program. And I want to be very clear about that. If you're an elementary music educator and you're like, that's great that you want your kids to learn drum machines and all these different things, but my middle school director is not going to be happy if I don't send up 4 trombones, Yeah. And so I think the first thing is just really reflecting on what is your end goal for students. And even if, let's say, you are constricted in certain ways that are beyond your control, is there still a world in which you can get students to play other things and just play and explore music? The kids in my orchestra, all of them played keyboard at some point, and all of them tried guitar and ukulele at some point. And we still did classical rep, and they still all played stringed instruments. But for me, it was, okay, we're working within the system. So how can we have other opportunities to try other things?
Yeah. So what I hear is like this idea that music doesn't have to be so much staying in a lane or in a silo. It really can be this expansive thing where we're thinking about even more holistically, right? We're not just saying like, you will be the clarinet player. No, you're going to be a musician and you'll learn the clarinet, but you're also going to have all these other experiences and opportunities too.
I got to hang out at a school, Heather Fortune. So shout out to Heather Fortune. Yep, she's another Philadelphia music educator. And I got to go and visit her classroom. And it was so cool because her middle school ensemble looked very different from her high school ensemble. And I say ensemble because there was no band mold or orchestra mold that this group was fitting into. There was 6 electric guitars and a string section and a drummer. And it was so cool to see how she really did find a way to get them to ensemble together. And I wish more of us had experiences where we could see that, and it could take away some of our fear, right? Of, well, what happens if a kid wants to try an instrument that I don't really know how to teach? There are so many ways that we can encourage kids to even go beyond what we're comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. But it takes us being willing to say like, okay, and being willing to listen when the students happen to bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot, but I think, it's possible.
Yeah.
And people like Heather prove that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because, we submitted for some editorial reviews on the book, and the one that came back said, something to the effect of, wow, this is unlike any music room I've ever seen. I can't imagine having a music classroom with a drum machine. And, they were listing things off, but this wasn't a musician or a music educator. Yeah. And it just goes to show we really have such a closed mind about what school music can be. And so I just love this idea of showing a world where, a kid is playing the saxophone, but he's next to another fourth grader who is playing the drum set, and these things can coexist. It doesn't have to be an either or situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think we have so much trouble with that right now?
I think, without getting too deep into it, I think that because music education has become so siloed in ensemble spaces, there's a thought that if a kid is getting music or experiencing music in a way that's different than what our program offers, that it's going to somehow diminish what we're doing. And I think there's a lot of educators who might feel threatened or even scared or even unwilling to imagine a reality that was different than what they had growing up. And so I think it's pretty complicated, and it's different, obviously, in every school and every situation. But in my experiences, whenever more possibilities were given, growth happened everywhere.
Yeah.
Not the opposite. And so I love to share that, because when our program that I taught in expanded offerings, everyone won. And I think that was a really cool thing to see. And I'm not sure if you've experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's something I'll hear, if a school, for example, has a band program and wants to expand to orchestra, the worry is, oh no, but it's going to hurt. No, we're going to be getting more kids involved in music. And that's the same thing with adding guitar, with adding any other kind of classes that are going to be offering these things that might be outside of that traditional band, chorus, orchestra that we're used to. Yeah. You're getting more kids in music. And that goes back to, I even wrote this down. You said, what's the end goal for these students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, like, for me, the end goal for the music program has always been kids making music.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. And it's so interesting, like, back to the student voice question and me saying I wasn't really a good Ms. A type teacher in the beginning. I think what changed my mindset or sort of shifted that is realizing, like, the kids who are gravitating towards music making don't have a space in our program. There's all these kids who are gravitating towards playing music in my hallway every single day. Yeah. And I thought, like, if these are the most passionate musicians in the school and there's not a single class that quote unquote fits their skills, we are doing something completely wrong. And so, what is the purpose of music? What is the end goal for our students? And if we want music to be enriching their lives, we really have to reimagine what that's going to look like, because it might not be the same as it was for us as a kid.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Theresa, when you were asking that question of, like, what is it? I feel like what came up in me was just like the control, the losing of control, right? You don't know the end result, and I also heard, I'm trying to think if it was Heather who would say, we have to kind of get over ourselves a little bit, and not like in a mean way, but just like, but we do, right? Like, we it's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to try new things, and it's okay to, not know where it's going to exactly go. So yeah, that's, I think, what makes it so scary sometimes. But like you've said, Sarah, when you do, it just really blossoms. All the cool things that you didn't even know could happen. People start to share, and it's And
I like the idea of learning together, and that's one part in the book that I had fun writing, because I wanted to show more about the guitar in general. So I wanted this to be a book that a teacher could use if they were going to introduce the guitar. And it has a lot about just how the guitar works. But what I think is fun is the teacher gathers the students around and says, okay, this student wants to learn this. Let's all learn it together and learn the basics of it and hear how it sounds. And I found for myself, that's what really transformed my high school general music class, was when I stopped saying, who wants to learn what? But I started to say, hey, let's all learn a little bit about the guitar, a little bit about the bass, a little bit about the drums. Let's try everything. And then you can kind of figure out what you want to spend your time doing. And having that group learning effort also made me one of the students. And to your point, I had to get over myself and say like, okay, this kid next to me is going to shred on the guitar in ways that I never can. And that's actually great. He can be the teacher for this part. And then maybe I'll teach the keyboard part.
Yeah. What a powerful experience for that student then to be able to have that moment of like, I am the expert in the room at the moment and I get to share that. I can think of so many times when we almost shut it down, right? Not on purpose, but the kids are say, well, I know, but like, I know I'm teaching it. I got this. Right. But we have to step back and say, no, okay, please show us, teach us.
Yeah.
I love those moments when you can really turn it on to the students to share their expertise and share their knowledge because it's so valuable for the classroom.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then going back to student voice, like the student gets to share and also feel so heard in the classroom. You get that I am kind of a little expert in this little corner of this and that you let me share. Like that's big. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so many good messages.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going back and forth a little bit, but I'm still thinking more about the whole, instrument selection thing. Yeah. There's a lot to
that thing.
That thing, right? And I'm even just thinking about like, so I mostly taught band. I also taught orchestra some, but just the idea of when the students would come to me and they'd say, well, I want to play this, but my mom says I should play this because, and sometimes it was like, well, mom says that's a boy's instrument or mom, but I especially later in my career really tried to always just say like, what do you want to play? What feels good? What sounds good? And I would let them like try the different things. And I felt like for me that really let the student like make a connection with the instrument almost. And then from that connection, they could say, this is the one I want. Right. What are your thoughts?
So I had this interesting position where I also taught band and orchestra. But I mostly taught this general arts course where I had every kid in the school and we did a project. Their very first project was you're going to form a cover band and cover a song. And so, I had the concertmaster from the orchestra next to a kid who had never touched an instrument. And it was this amazing kind of democratization of music and playful musicianship. But I feel like we would do a group therapy session every time before this project. Because we really talked about, okay, what makes you a musician? What does it mean to be a musician? And do we think that being musical is something that we're given as a birthright? Is it something that some of us have and some of us don't have? And we would have these long discussions just about like, what kind of emotional musical baggage are you bringing to your adolescent experience? Because by ninth grade, most of them have in their head whether or not they can do something, right?
Yeah.
Are you an artist or are you not? Are you musical or are you not? And so what I found is all of these students, and I mean, these are thousands of students over my 16 years doing this course. So many students had these stories of, well, I got kicked out of band in 7th grade, or, well, I had to play the flute, but it was too hard and I couldn't get to the second register. So those were their experiences is I failed on a specific instrument, so I'm not musical. And I saw this through line drawn so many times. And so for me, it was a lot of unpacking. All right, well, musicianship can be expressed through an instrument, but the flute doesn't hold your musicianship. Do you like to listen to music? Great. What do you like to listen to? Great. Let's learn the keyboard part and see how you feel. And so I think having that experience made me realize, like, as music teachers, we're not explicitly, sometimes we are, which is a huge issue, but hopefully we're not explicitly saying, you're not great at the flute, so music is not for you. But it is a message that many of our students are getting. And so if they're struggling with an instrument, we are missing an incredible opportunity to have them develop their musicianship. I see it with my son. He is playing the saxophone, but he had an instrument that was unplayable. And I didn't realize that because I'm not a saxophone player, but my mom is. And she, took it to her house and she was like, I can't get a sound out on this. And my son had been so frustrated, and I thought it's just because he didn't enjoy music, but it was just the instrument, right? And so I think like we never want an instrument to be a barrier for music participation. We always want it to be a door that opens them up into being able to be musical.
Yeah. That's such a good way to think about it.
It makes me think of like as general music, when we are deep into composing, some kids like really shine and they take it home and I made 5 more songs and and then when we're playing barred instruments and there's other right? Like there's just so many different little areas that really get somebody excited in music. And it's not just playing this instrument or composing. It can be all these different things. So it is good to remember to just the more we can kind of give kids creating opportunities and all those things, like we can just get them excited about music. So
yeah, it's almost like having that elementary music mindset continue on.
Yeah.
Like you're struggling with your shifting on the violin, get a boom whacker for 10 minutes and see how you feel,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've often thought that when we even we'll interview guests who are elementary general music teachers. I'm like, oh my goodness, we need all of the instrumental people to listen to this just because the mindset is perfect.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, before we get to our last couple questions, any other messages from the book that we want to make sure that listeners come away with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many because again, I've just tried to pack it full of everything that I care about, but women in music is a big one. And just showing, again, having been a guitar teacher and just seeing a lot of curriculum that's out there, I'm very aware of, how are our students seeing themselves in the curriculum? And so, especially when it comes to representation of different instruments and sometimes the gendering of instruments, guitar, that's just one that I'm very passionate about. And so throughout the book, we do mention some female guitarists that have made a big impact on music. And again, that's not the focus of the book. So I am excited that hopefully some of these are new names that kids can then go learn more about or ask their parents about. So just, that representation in music is really big. And then also, the sense of, as music educators, knowing our students and knowing how to create relationships so we know when to push and when to not push. I'm sorry, I keep freezing.
You're good.
But so knowing when to push, but then knowing when our students actually need us to pull back and support in other ways. Those are some of the big themes that I try to explore in it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll obviously at the end ask you where to find the book, but yeah.
Yeah.
And from I was also very fortunate to get a sneak peek, and I agree that there's so many good things packed in.
Yeah. If what would you say if people want to try something tomorrow? What would you suggest?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is fun, again, in this book that we talked about, is this girl has all of this knowledge about guitarists that she loves. And again, it seems like she's the shy kid in class. So her teacher might not have known that she loved the electric guitar and knew so much about it. Something that I'm going to be trying as I go and do school visits and I read the book to students and do a guitar exploration with them is ask them to develop their dream instrument. So what is your dream instrument? I want you to describe it. I want you to draw a picture of it. I want you to tell me what it can do. I want you to tell me what it can sound like. I want you to tell me why this is your dream instrument. I want you to tell me where you would play it. And then also how you think people would receive it. And so in doing that kind of thought process, I'm already learning something about their musical knowledge, especially when I'm working with the elementary kiddos. Like, what instruments do you know that exist? If they're making some type of hybrid instrument, they're showing me what they already know. But it's also giving me a chance to talk to them about sound. It's giving me a chance to talk to them about the function of instruments, right, in performance spaces. And so I think doing some of those creative exploratory exercises shows what they already know and then can help us, decide where we want to go with having them explore new instruments.
That
I love
fun.
that. Yeah, I love too that it's like getting little, especially when it's elementary, getting little kids to think about what kind of sounds they do like. Someone may not have asked them that before, so they may not know, but now they'll be thinking about it for sure.
Yeah. And just the idea of getting them to imagine what could be possible, right? Instead of just focusing on what is. Like, let's expand their imaginations a little bit.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that all of the instruments we play were created at some point. The saxophone has not been around that long in terms of human history, and it's through innovation. And there's tons of musical innovations that are happening right now, especially with electronic instruments. And so, getting kids to think about the fact that this isn't fixed. It's not, this isn't a field that's closed. There's still so much innovation that could happen.
Yeah. I love that. Awesome. Well, if people want to connect with you and, obviously purchase a copy of the book and all of those things, where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
So they can find me. I've been sharing more on my personal music page. So I do play with a couple of groups and perform music on my own. And so I've been trying to share more about my music and my book it's just Sarah Gulish Music is my Instagram. And then we have a ton of stuff on our FLAT Books website. So the book is at the website. It's flat-books.com. We have a hardback copy. We also have our interactive ebook, which is super fun because there's actually videos of me teaching some short guitar songs to kids embedded in the book. So if you want to explore guitar with your class, that's a really fun way to do it and have it up on the smartboard. And I also got my niece and my daughter to record the voices for the book. So it's very sweet. There's a lot of kid-centered stuff in there. So yes, it can be found really wherever books are sold. But if you go to FLAT Books, that benefits us the most.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll make sure we'll put links to the FLAT website and then your social media stuff as well. Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We know everyone out there is going to love the book. We've loved it. And everyone that we've heard from who's also had a chance to read it has said really good things. So
thank you both so much.
If you liked today's episode, you will love the PassTheBatonBook.com website, where you can find free resources, coaching services, and how to support Pass the Baton. Speaking of support, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening.